Justice does not die in darkness.
Darkness kills justice.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Winnie the Westie, who's already falling asleep. This is a variation of the motto for the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness. One day I said, no, democracy does not die in darkness. Darkness kills democracy. Democracy does not crawl into the corner and die in darkness. It is the suffocating effect of darkness itself that kills democracy.
And the same is true of justice.
And this week we have two prime examples as to how justice will die in darkness, and that is because of the darkness that has been cast on the Ghislaine Maxwell and Jussie Smollett trials. Now, in fairness, these trials are not being kept entirely in the dark. Reporters are allowed in. People are allowed reporting on these trials, although there are some more restrictions on the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, just given the nature of that trial. But ultimately, a certain barrier has been set up so that there is not total transparency, and that barrier really prevents a lot of people from closely and conveniently following what is going on in these trials, and that is precisely because it is not just the defendants that are on trial in these cases, it is the system itself. In the Jussie Smollett trial, it is the system that's on trial, from the media to the prosecution to the judicial system itself, and in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial,
it is a lot more of the system that is on trial in that case.
Which brings us to the subject matter of this vlog, summarizing what is going on in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial so people can truly understand what is at issue here. Now, because the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is not being broadcast in the same way the Rittenhouse trial was being broadcast because it's a federal case, there are various levels of reporting. You have your reporters on the street who are there every day taking notes and tweeting out updates as the day progresses, and those include the likes of YouTube lawyer Joe Neerman, who has a channel called Good Logic, who is covering this on a daily basis, and a Twitter handle called Inner City Press, who is doing amazing work covering the trial.
Today is day 6 of the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, and we were introduced to a woman who goes by the pseudonym of Kate. Now, before she took the stand, the judge instructed the jury that Kate was of age at the time that she met Maxwell and Epstein, and that none of the testimony about any of their sexual encounters should be taken by the jury as indicative of any illegal contact.
Okay, here we are, Inner City Press, 40 Foley Square, day 7 of U.S. versus Ghislaine Maxwell.
Then you have some of the summarized, more synthesized coverage of the trial, and that comes by way of Robert Gruler, who every night goes over the trial and has amazing diagrams to help everybody understand what's going on.
What exactly is Kate doing here in the government's scheme of the line of questioning? They've got a number of different witnesses that they've called. We've got Dr. Lisa Rocchio. Why was she brought in? She laid out the framework for grooming. Remember this from the mind map, which you can go browse yourself if you'd like to get the link over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com.
But even that is still not sufficiently accessible for everyday people who don't necessarily have 1 or 2 hours a day to follow this trial, so I'm putting out this vlog to summarize what's going on and where we are at in the trial. But for those of you who may not know who the players are in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, first of all, I would like to know what rock you are living under, because I would like to join you and hide myself from this world sometimes. But the players in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial are, on the one hand, Jeffrey Epstein, and on the other hand, Ghislaine Maxwell. Jeffrey Edward Epstein, January 20, 1953 to August 10, 2019, was an American financier and convicted bad person. Epstein, who was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York City, began his professional life by teaching at the Dalton School in Manhattan despite lacking a college degree. After his dismissal from the school, he entered the banking and finance sector, working at Bear Stearns in various roles. He eventually started his own firm. Epstein developed an elite social circle, and you can continue reading on your own, but this is what's at issue here. In 2019, Epstein allegedly did something to himself that a lot of people out there don't actually think Epstein did to himself, but this sort of begs the question as to how Jeffrey Epstein, a man without a university degree, could have ever gotten to the position that he got himself into.
In come Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine Noel Marion Maxwell, born 25 December 1961, is a British socialite known for her association with financier and convicted bad person Jeffrey Epstein. She worked with her father, Robert Maxwell, until his death in 1991, when she moved to the United States and became a close associate of Epstein. In 2020, Maxwell was charged by the U.S. federal government with crimes of enticement of minors and very bad crimes. Now, there is a rabbit hole to go down here that we're not going to do in this vlog. I have already discussed it at length with Robert Barnes in prior live streams, but Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, has his own history, has his own ties and connections to various intelligence agencies throughout the world, and he met a rather suspicious and untimely death as well. In November 1991, Robert Maxwell's body was found floating in the sea near the Canary Islands and the Lady Ghislaine. Lady Ghislaine was the name of Robert Maxwell's yacht. Soon afterwards, Ghislaine flew to Tenerife, where the yacht was berthed, to attend his business paperwork. Ghislaine attended her father's funeral in Jerusalem alongside various Israeli intelligence figures, President Chaim Herzog, and Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, who gave his eulogy. Although a verdict of death by accidental drowning was recorded, Maxwell has since said she believes her father was murdered, commenting in 1997, quote, "He did not Epstein himself. This was just not consistent with his character. I think he was murdered," end quote. After his death, Robert Maxwell was found to have been involved with various frauds in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars, but that is neither here nor there, getting to the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. So after Jeffrey Epstein did or did not Epstein himself, there was really only one other key player to go after in terms of the charges against Jeffrey Epstein, and that was Ghislaine Maxwell herself. I've covered the indictment against Ghislaine Maxwell in prior vlogs, so you can go watch that to get a more detailed breakdown, but you know the nature of the accusations against Ghislaine Maxwell. The question in this case is going to be, is Ghislaine Maxwell a participant? Is she a ringleader? Or was she merely a lackey to Jeffrey Epstein? At this point, the prosecution is going to want to lay all of the remaining blame on Ghislaine Maxwell so they can get a conviction out of her, and they can put this all to rest without having to expose the many, many names in Jeffrey Epstein's black book. He literally had a black book with names in it. We know some of those names. We know some of the names that have appeared on his flight log who have visited Jeffrey Epstein's infamous island, but in this particular case, the prosecution is probably just going to want to convict Ghislaine Maxwell and move on with life and not expose some of the dirty, dark secrets of society and the system as we know it. And this is what I mean when I say that justice is going to die in darkness. In this case, I am thoroughly convinced they are going to get a conviction against Ghislaine Maxwell, but there will not be justice in this case because Ghislaine Maxwell is probably only the tip of the iceberg of the wrongdoing in this case. Which brings us to the summary and the breakdown of the trial itself as of the current date, which is
December 7th, 2021.
The prosecution started off by calling as witnesses certain alleged victims to explain the process through which Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell would condition them, so to speak, for the uses that were being made of them for Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and others who have not been named. The prosecution then called an expert witness who explained how this entire process works, how predators choose their prey, and how they condition their prey to become dependent on them. The defense expectedly came in and attacked the credibility of the witnesses, their memories, their motivations. Apparently, some of the alleged victims had sought compensation through a relief fund. Therefore, it could be said that they had a financial motive for purporting to be victims. One of the alleged victims had sought for immigration status based on her victim status, which the defense then used as a motive to undermine the credibility of the witness. Then the prosecution called as a witness Juan Alessi, who used to work for Jeffrey Epstein and or Ghislaine Maxwell at their various properties. He knew what was going on. He had access to this infamous black book. He had access to a manual that instructed employees how to address Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And I gotta tell you something, that manual is absolutely out of this world. The instruction manual for the employees contained instructions as to how the employees were to address Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Don't look at him in the eyes. Don't carry things in your pockets. It contained instructions as to how to maintain the rooms. If a bottle of toothpaste was half full or less, they should replace it with a full bottle of toothpaste. The instruction manual was something you might expect to find at an international hotel chain or something a dictator would draft for their servants. After lunch, Alessi spoke about the, quote, many rules, end quote, of running Epstein's Palm Beach home, from how to present the dining table to how the staff should dress to how they should address Epstein and Maxwell. He said he received a booklet of instructions from Maxwell at one point, which he found, quote, degrading, end quote. Prosecutors shared a 58-page household manual from Epstein's Palm Beach residence, which included directives like, quote, see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing except to answer a question directed at you, end quote. But Juan Alessi testified to what went on at the Epstein mansions, to the massages that went on at those mansions, to the cleanup he had to effect after those massages, and it's genuinely gross stuff. Juan's testimony is genuinely disgusting, and it seems to clearly implicate Ghislaine Maxwell and the late Jeffrey Epstein. The only problem in my mind is the prosecution seems a little too content limiting it to that, because it definitely implicates other people and much higher up people as well. But regardless, this is Ghislaine Maxwell's trial alone, and Juan Alessi is coming in to describe circumstances that could easily allow a jury to come to the conclusion that Ghislaine Maxwell is guilty of the charges against her. The defense comes in and again predictably tries to undermine the credibility of Juan Alessi, paints him as something of a criminal because apparently Juan Alessi had stolen tens of thousands of dollars from Epstein, apparently attempted to steal a gun, and apparently gave some contradictory statements in prior depositions. The defense brings up not only the fact that Juan Alessi is not necessarily the most savory character, but he also also made tons of money working for the Epsteins, and lo and behold, he may himself have participated in some of the alleged crimes. At one point, the defense said, well, Juan, you were driving cars around, you were transporting people, so aren't you guilty of the very same crimes for which Ghislaine Maxwell is being accused? Now, although this is a very predictable strategy for the defense, I think it's a very dangerous one, and I think it's mutually incompatible with their other defense. On the one hand, they're saying that the alleged victims have bad memories, don't trust them, they have ulterior motives for claiming to be victims, and yet when it comes to Juan Alessi, they're basically saying, look, you participated in the alleged crime. So the alleged victims should not be believed because they have bad memories and it didn't happen to them, but Juan Alessi should not be believed because he participated in the crime himself. Those are mutually incompatible arguments.
In my humble opinion.
That is where things stand as of the present date, and my issue with this is it looks like the prosecution is going to secure a conviction. Even if Ghislaine Maxwell does not think they're going to secure a conviction, they are going to secure a conviction. But this is basically being conducted behind closed doors. There are journalists in there, people are reporting on it, but it is not getting the limelight of the media that it deserves, and they're going to secure a conviction, and in securing that conviction, they're going to propagate a further injustice. They are going to propagate a further injustice because there is no way that this entire scheme was limited to Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. It involved big players. It involved big players that no prosecutor is ever going to want to go after. So quickly and discreetly secure that conviction against Ghislaine Maxwell so the prosecution can say, look, justice was served, but in securing that conviction against Ghislaine Maxwell alone, an injustice has been committed. And with that said, if you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm. If you want to support the channel, all support links are in the pinned comment. Robert Barnes and I do weekly streams every Sunday. We do weekly streams with a guest every Wednesday called The Sidebar. If you want to find us and support us on Locals, where supporters get lots of exclusive content, you can find us at
VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com.
My content is also available on Rumble and on podcasts, but more important than any of that, take care of yourselves, check in on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace out.